What's up, guys? Starting it up in a minute. Was kicking it off with a little classical in the background. Just experimenting, seeing if you guys can hear that whenever I'm playing it and the mic is off. So it is 4:01 p.m. New York time on Friday, October 2nd. So time for a live stream. Let me open my camera. What's going on? How you doing, everybody? Make sure that everything is working out properly. Let's resize this. We don't need my big head in the image blocking anything that's important. Okay, so now that this is down, cool. You could hear that? That was Ave Maria. But what's going on, guys? Okay, so waiting to see the salmon bowl. Yeah, I just cleaned that, completely cleaned that. I left the rice in the bottom, some of the cucumber. I put it back in the fridge, but I cleaned all the salmon. The problem with that bowl was, so I live really close to a really popular village on the North Shore of Long Island. The problem with, and there's all these bango bowls all over. The problem with, I don't know why I segued into it was a 5-second drive. I ran up the road. I was going to make myself a lunch at home and decided to take a trip up the road and grab a bango bowl. So the problem with that, it was just covered in dressing, which we'll see how that feels maybe a few minutes from now. Some kind of chipotle, spicy ranch, heavy dressing. Takes all the health away from what would maybe be a semi-healthy bowl. Right? What's going on, Mr. K? Cyberpunk, Gorilla Glue, Josh, D. Ross, recognize you. What's up, Dave? Crip McCrypto, how's it going? George Toki, how you doing? Timothy. Okay, so stream is just starting. I'm going to give it a minute or two and let everyone get situated. Do have sort of a plan of action with some direction, but as I said in the what's up, I'm not sure I'm going to do a good job of pronouncing your name, so I don't want to massacre that, but I'm going to say Geld. Cheers from the Netherlands. Okay, what's going on? Pugaz, X Factor. All right, good stuff. So I'm going to take any kind of suggestions, any alts that you're interested in that you want to chart, and what I'll do is I'll add them to today's live stream list. So if you want to see anything, name an alt. Don't go naming 5 or 10 alts. I will literally just pick the first one. We don't have 2-3 hours to go through every single altcoin in the entire crypto universe. So name one that you're interested in, maybe that you have a position in. That you're interested in hearing more about, not from a fundamental standpoint, because I am bereft of knowledge when it comes to crypto fundamentals. And I say that half seriously, but I could just look at everything from a technical standpoint. And then the best looking chart, whoever shares the best looking chart, we're going to go ahead and give away $100 in BTC. Okay, so we have a few people in here. HNS. Okay, MTA, I just added that on, so I'm going to add HNS to this. We'll go through these at the end. Handshake, it's called Handshake. Okay, I'm going to go by the Bitrex pair. God, it's been so long. Ooh, this is this is the pair you want to chart? I'm assuming you have a substantial position in this, and it might not be working out too well. Okay. CRV, namaste. You know what? I'm God, like all the other things I've gotten into recently. I got into yoga. I guess it was 2 months now. I got into yoga with my wife every morning, and did it for 2 months or a month and a half, and then just kind of fell out of that. Been really hectic lately, between helping my wife out with her company after she cut the tip of her finger off. So if you follow me on Twitter, you heard all about that. Everything is good now. But between trying to trade as much as possible. So here's the problem, right? I am one of the larger accounts in crypto Twitter. I am by no means, up there with some of the really large following accounts. But when you put out content, it's sort of like the conservation of energy, right? There's only so much that can go around. So when you're posting on Twitter, when you're writing a newsletter, which I think our newsletter has been incredible. So if you go to blockroots.substack.com, it's only I think it's $9.95 a month or $9.99. And we do a phenomenal job with our market update, and we'll post intra-week if there's something to talk about. But a lot of times if we're silent, you'll see that there was really nothing to do besides get trapped in positions, right? So the newsletter, doing YouTube, the BlockRoots platform, all these things, they do take away from me being someone who is a full-time trader, right? I'm in a different position now that I'm no longer managing anyone else's money. But still, it makes a huge difference. You need to be dialed in. And I have changed from more of a treat crypto as a side market and swing that market to being more fine-tuned in this market on a lower time frame, which really at that point requires your ultimate focus. So that being said, it is, I took up a bunch of things recently. Like I took up yoga. I started programming with Python. I took 2 weeks to attempt to start a new language. All these things, as they say, trade during the bull market, build and pick up your hobbies again in the bear market. And nothing could be truer, because there's really it's you're borrowing from one to give to the other. Okay, so you're either going to make content or you're going to be trading successfully. And for me, when I see the market moving, it's like a dog watching a tennis ball fly across the lawn. Okay, they're just going to go after it, and that's the way that I need to be. And unfortunately, yoga is one of this completely ellipse in terms of getting back to you saying namaste and me being used to saying namaste for a month straight, and getting out of that. So big segue for that one. But namaste to you. So, okay, ocean. Ocean. So we'll add ocean here, add CRV. Okay. We're going to look at CRV Tether. There's plenty of USD fiat pairs for that one. And then we'll add CRV against Bitcoin, because it's always important to know how it's performing relative to Bitcoin. Okay, ocean. Ocean Bitcoin. EOS. Okay. EOS, however you want to pronounce it. All right, YFL, have that, I believe. We have YFL. I don't have YFL, I have YFI. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add YFL. It's only on Poloniex? That's a shame. It's got to be, I'll find it on a, take this off because it's going to be an ugly, no, it's not that bad on Poloniex, but I bet on the low time frames it's going to get ugly. And all I mean is the way that it's sort of sparse in terms of price action, because there's not a lot of liquidity. XDAI. I mean, that's on Poloniex also. Okay. FTM. All right, I'm just going to add a few more of these, and FTM. Then we're going to start it up. Okay. I want to give everyone a chance to, pick their pair. NEBL, and don't be surprised if when we go through these at the end, I give you a quick update, but it's just there's nothing there. Ashtanga Yoga, no, it was just to be honest, it was a Netflix special. No, it was an Amazon Prime thing we were doing with the TV. My wife has been doing yoga though for years, so I've been following her. She just does it in the morning on her own. Does not require any kind of guided learning. Link. Okay, let's add Link USD. Okay, I think we're, it was a great experience. I have to, again, like I said, need to get back into that. Practice. Seems like you haven't picked a winner yet in your giveaway for a long time. Will you pick? No, we pick a winner for every giveaway we do. But not every single winner is picked in the video. So for example, and this just comes down to sometimes not actually making a video and forgetting to mention that, like, all right, at the end I'm going to do the shuffle and then not doing it, and then doing this on Twitter DM. So there was a guy who reached out to me. Let me add hidden gem. I don't know, man. I haven't heard about it. Can't even find it on TradingView. There was a guy who won the most recent. Are you talking about Ripple? XRP. There was a guy who won the most recent. One of the more recent competition. Not competitions. There was no competition. Yeah, I guess first to answer. He won the $100 giveaway by answering what the background image was, which was a Jackson Pollock. I just didn't see his comment. I went through those comments, didn't see it. I had mentioned what it actually was in a Discord stream. So we do these live streams on BlockRoots.com. So 5 days a week we'll do a live stream. This week it felt like I only did like 3, so I apologize for that. But again, my wife, she's good now, so you'd be surprised how many things your wife can have you do when she's missing a thumb. But like I said, it's back. So I ended up just overlooking it. Didn't realize that he had answered correctly, and he reached out to me and wrote this long message about how he follows, and I felt really bad. So sent him that right away. Every time we do a giveaway, someone's on the receiving end of that. Okay. AVAX. If I can't find these other pairs, you're going to have to tell me. Maybe they're on Uniswap, Vision. All right, so this is good for now. I want to get into some of the update. Got a bunch of people on here. Yeah. No, Josh, you're right. I put Uni up there. I put a few up there that I think are worth going over just because they're sort of the topic of conversation as of late. Let me just pop this chat out on the other screen. I have my trading platform open there. So a lot to talk about. First things first. Okay. There was, you and Josh are some of the best, not sensationalists, and you sound TA. I appreciate that, Tom. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, it's, there's a method to everyone's madness on YouTube. There's a reason why people make sensationalist videos. You're fighting for attention. And even if you're, a well-meaning person who has intentions of doing right in this space, sometimes it's almost like you have to compete in the same manner for eyes and ears that other people are. So it's tough to maintain this non-sensational. It's not tough, but we do our best to do it, to not, for example, this image for this YouTube, it's a chessboard, right? I really like it. I like it a lot, right? Chess, okay? Chess and trading, a lot of similarities. Now, the problem is it's not colorful and flashy, and it's not going to attract a lot of eyes and attention the way that maybe a sensationalist YouTube would make their thumbnail, right? There's a complete method, like I said, to the madness. So we try to be as genuine as possible and really just provide sort of that non-sensational insight with regard, non-sensational actionable insight. So not just going over, this is what happened this week and sort of curating the week's news and then parroting to you, but actually leaving you with something that, hey, maybe you didn't know yesterday. Myself now, I've had to change the year every time now. I'm on 14 years now trading. So, and professional trading and trading for myself, and then creating BlockRoots and partnering with Josh. So, if pedigree stands for anything, I hope that speaks for itself. So I appreciate the feedback. Now, what's going on, Timeless? I'm going to keep saying hi to everyone. What's going on, buddy? I was about to use your first name, but I don't want to dox you. Timeless is a fantastic follow on Twitter. He was a member of BlockRoots. Just some people just have it and pick it up very quickly, and he is certainly one of them. Michael P. Andre. Okay, cool. So first things first. Bitmex, right? Bitmex. Now, you can imagine that this was like a long time coming. And we're still more or less in a position where we are waiting for the other shoe to drop with other exchanges. Okay, the problem is that Bitmex in the very beginning, their method of acquiring customers was very outright in sort of knowing that United States customers were using the exchange, going to United States influencers and having an understanding that United States traders that were popular from the United States were using the exchange. They were completely open to this, even though They didn't comply with the United States regulations. So, they are, even though they sort of fell down the totem pole after March. What's going on, Josh? What's going on? D, I said hi to you. Even though Bitmex sort of fell down the totem pole in terms of liquidity and volume since March, they are still, they are the exchange that you think of when you're thinking of crypto derivatives. There's plenty of prop desks, institutional trading firms that have some exposure on Bitmex, okay, that are not trading, on XYZ number 20 down on the list. Okay, Bitmex is a big name. Arthur Hayes is a it's a first mover in this space almost. Okay, it's synonymous with crypto derivatives, and they are essentially the brains behind the perpetual swap, the thing that we all get to enjoy if we are taking advantage of convexity. So they came under scrutiny, and as you can imagine, that was sort of an inevitability, right? I'm not necessarily worried about anything happening with any other exchanges in the foreseeable future, in the near future, I should say, near future, not foreseeable future. I would expect, and I shared a tweet from Josh Nomics yesterday, it's a similar line of thinking, that until this is all settled, that there'll be nothing else with regards to any other exchanges, because there are no other exchanges right now that are really outrightly targeting United States customers. More importantly, that have an office in the United States. So Bitmex was guilty of that. Not like they're guilty of that as if it's a crime, but hey, if you're going to be implicated in something that is not necessarily allowed for, it's probably not a good idea to have an office space in the place that you are, you fall out of regulatory oversight or allowance, right? So you're not allowing United States customers, more or less as simple terms. Why do you have an office here? We obviously know how international business works. You don't have to be relegated to your domain or your area or your province. So that being said, Bitmex being very important in terms of open interest, in terms of volume, being a major player within the space, they're pretty much a first target, right? And they've been around the longest, the most successful. So you have to imagine that the United States government, they don't really care about people's best interest, so to speak. That's not the bottom line ever. The bottom line is the bottom line that you're taught is the bottom line since you're a kid. The bottom line comes down to dollars, right? So I think that ultimately what's going to resolve from this is they're going to be paying, right? It's going to be a monetary thing. It would be absolutely terrible if there was any kind of, besides any kind of, I don't want to say punitive damage, but monetary damage, if there was any kind of criminal charge, that would just be mind-blowing, because, you don't have to be, an economist or any person within finance, or you don't have to be anyone of that regard to know that the United States is guilty of a lot of the crimes that they prosecute, right? When it comes to banking and the major movers and shakers within the financial universe, and how they get away with a lot, right? Look no further than the 2008 financial crisis. So, do I think that they'll be made an example of? Yes. Do I think that other exchanges will, cross their T's and dot their I's a little bit more and exercise a little bit more scrutiny? Yes, I do. Do I think that it's on the United States plate to take on, upon all of this work right now, and not just to focus on Bitmex? No. So you have to imagine that it's good for regulation, though, right? Any kind of regulation, is good for long-term for crypto. You could bet that more and more regulation means that a crypto ETF, Bitcoin ETF, becomes more and more likely. Think about it from this standpoint. You are a pension fund, you're an investment fund, you're an endowment, and you are thinking about investing in this. It's a high beta asset. That it's something that potentially is offering asymmetric upside. It has a narrative to it. Do you want to allocate capital from a pension fund or a long only fund, or anything that's not some kind of private hedge fund and is not playing with house money? Do you want to allocate to something that could potentially be affected and have systematic risk that's built around an exchange doing something illegal, right? an exchange not complying with regulations. The United States has the longest arm in regulation. It doesn't matter where you go, they're going to get you. It doesn't matter what you do, they're going to find a way to, decentralize exchanges. The whole concept is they're untouchable. They might be untouchable, but everybody who's responsible for them is not. And you could bet that they're going to get there. They're going to take their scalps. What's that great movie? Inglourious Bastards, right? He wants their scalps. Okay, so that being said, let's say that you are the CME, CFTC, you are backed, you are a regulated crypto entity. You look over at Bitmex and you're thinking, hey, what are they doing over there? That big group over there that has all the volume, they control the market, okay? They are potentially manipulating the market in the way, the trading desk, okay? They're screwing us. We don't have those weekend hours. We can't control what crypto does on Saturday night. So just all the things that could potentially be a conflict of interest for an entity in the regulated market, if they plan on growing in that market or allocating more to that market. That's what I think a lot of it is. I think that, you don't mess with the United States. They see that you're doing well over there and they say, well, I want a little bit of that too. So we're going to tax you. And tax comes in more forms than just, some type of tax on your income, right? They're going to take something. They're going to penalize you. They're going to show you that they are the best player at the monopoly board. All right. There is infinite ammo on their part. So that being said, after this, what we're seeing in terms of the last 24 hours is we are seeing that BitMEX's open interest has taken a nosedive. Okay. It's taken a nosedive, but more importantly, it doesn't mean that you can't trade on BitMEX. No, it doesn't. If anything, I'm looking at lower time frame volume data with regards to, lower time frame candles. So I'm looking at 5-minute candles, 15-minute candles, just your normal rotations. And not a whole lot has changed in terms of our normal buying activity, for example. That being said, open interest is declining. There are people that are pulling their money off of the exchange, but for most traders, I don't think it's going to make a tremendous difference, because if we're looking at this chart right here, we could actually see that the bid-ask spread for 1 million and then for 5 million, the percentage hasn't really changed much. So for Bitmex, for a 1 million bid-ask spread, you're looking at 1 basis point. So it's basically negligible. It's about zero, right? That's not the case. It's obviously, it's approaching 1 basis point. Bybit close behind that. Josh and I are partners with Phemex. Go to Phemex.trade, check them out. They're right behind Bybit, and there's a very tight race being ran between Phemex and FTX. Now, the benefit of Phemex is your order's going through instantaneously. Okay, so how you weigh certain benefits, costs, that's up to you. And a lot of that can be contingent, or you can imagine would be contingent actually on your trading style. So if you're a scalper and you're using larger positions, this might affect you as you go further and further out and you scale up. Because if you're looking at the 5 million bid-ask spread, then to the 10 million bid-ask spread, we're going from 10 basis points. So it's actually 13 basis points. So just think of it as 13% of 1%, and then 32 basis points. So a third of a percentage point. That is by other crypto standards, crypto market standards, that might be still considered low. But in terms of Bitmex, we are starting to actually see that liquidity is beginning to, if it wasn't from the March crash, beginning to decline, right? The spreads are beginning to widen for that amount. It certainly is right now. So depending on your trading style, if you're a swing trader, this might not make a huge difference to you, right? But let's say that you're hitting the bid with 5 million contracts. Well, you're hitting the bid with 5 million contracts, you're lifting that offer, you're lifting that ask, and the book's not following you and price is falling back immediately, 32 basis points, right? So you're already, getting a haircut by getting into position. Obviously there's an argument for providing liquidity and placing resting limit orders, or creating resting liquidity by using limit orders. But this is beginning to, obviously, it's going to decline, I think, over the coming week as, the rest of those positions unwind for the people that are trying to take part in this exodus. A week from now, 2 weeks from now, what do I think? I think it becomes almost a forgotten event in crypto. Not a forgotten event in crypto. It does have ramifications for Bitmex, but I think that the short-term attention span here will prevail. That being said, I could be completely wrong, but this is just how I'm seeing it right now. If you're not trading massive size and you're still scalping lower time frames, you could still get away with, trading on Bitmex. Would I want to be on Bitmex now? I haven't been on Bitmex in over a year now. No, I wouldn't want to be on Bitmex now. There's plenty of awesome alternatives right now, and there's other alternatives that are, outside of the exchanges Josh and I work with. So that being said, next thing to talk about, I think that's important, and this is because there's been a very obvious correlation as of late. People want to argue that it's spurious because it's only the last month and a half. Well, for the last month and a half, 2 months, it has been very relevant. So on a tick for tick basis, we're starting to see that the SPX, or I like to just use the ES because it's the futures market. I think that some people don't understand that the futures market, it's basically the SPX. So if the futures move up in the overnight, the SPX is going to open higher, right? You're not going to really see that there's ever going to be a massive disconnect between those. So chart the ES, okay? That being said, there was a tick for tick relationship between the ES, and I think that this is always something to pay attention to when there is major systematic risk in crypto in traditional markets. When things are kind of all quiet on the Western Front in traditional markets, when the VIX is low, then you'll start to see that relationship that was strong maybe a week ago, it begins to sort of dissipate, obviously. When something happens, when the President of the United States contracts COVID, when there is something with regards to stimulus talks, anything that causes the market to move in a volatile manner in traditional markets, that's going to have an effect on crypto. Okay, we've seen that if it's not an instantaneous effect, that you at least have the benefit of being a lagged effect, right? So sometimes the effect is a few bars behind, right? You'll start to see that the ES is leading down and Bitcoin follows 5 minutes later. Okay, that is an exploitable opportunity. That is your leader and laggard play. And for me, that's a play worth taking more often than not. The intensity of the move is what matters, right? If you see that the ES dumps $10, $15, $20, in a 1 minute candle, look at your BTC chart, right? If you're not short at that point, tag on a short. I'm not giving you advice, but you have to be willing sometimes to hit that market sell button, that market buy button when a strong correlation exists. Doesn't matter if it hasn't been present for the last 2 years. The fact that it exists now is more important than that, right? You should almost prioritize recency in terms of lower time frame price action. Makes sense. Lower time frame, recency. Okay, you should absolutely prioritize any kind of strong relationships that have occurred more recently and expect them to persist until you find evidence otherwise. So Biden seems like he might be a stronger candidate now, or that the market is betting on Trump maybe not doing so well. So that means that there would likely be a weaker dollar. Okay, a weaker dollar is something that crypto has benefited from. Okay, so that's another relationship to pay attention to. That being said, everything is that I wanted to just touch on really quick. I want to talk about some charts. Okay, so let's look at BTC really quick. I don't want to get lost on the high time frame. I don't want to over glorify this trade whatsoever. So let's go to my high time frame BTC chart. I don't want to do more thinking than is necessary for this chart. Okay, for me, this is a major contextual level. And you might be thinking, well, you've been saying this for the last 2 weeks. Well, yeah, because the level hasn't changed, right? So if you have a level that you are abiding by and it is providing you with some form of directional bias, at least in the high time frame, until the level breaks, there's no real reason for you to start second guessing the level. If that's something that has consistently been applied throughout your system, or is sort of a cornerstone of your system, think of it that way. So for me, this level is the most important level right now. In the short term, I was paying attention to 11K. I became more sort of open to bi-directional trade or just two-way trade in general, to weighing shorts and longs on sort of the same scale or the same balance. But in terms of our higher time frame positioning, I'm not doom and gloom until this thing gives away. This is an area where sentiment's going to get very negative. We saw there was negative funding for quite some time. We have basis that for the sustained portion of this trend, or excuse me, the has been sustained to the downside for most of this range, right? So even in the moves that have made their ways upward, I don't care about funding. All I care about is basis. I care about the fact that on the derivatives platforms that the bid is getting hit more aggressively than it is on the spot exchanges, right? Or that the spot might be getting hit equally as hard, but is holding price up more. Okay, the spot market is going to provide a floor. This is not, this is not the oil market. This is something where we actually have a very popular spot asset. It's not driven yet by the derivatives market. Is it moved around because of it? Yes, but the floor is going to be found on the spot market. So for me, primarily, I'm looking at this level right here. The lower level right there is 9,824. Where'd that level come from? It's the value area high of this range. So this previous range that we were in for, we're going from May all the way to the end of July, or excuse me, the middle of July, more towards the end, right? That is the area, the top side of where we spend 70% of the time. Not concerned with a specific price point. Okay, it's a liquid market, but again, I've mentioned this many times. Not concerned with a specific price point. On the way up, right? On the way up here, on the way up here, on the way up here, it was never a specific price point. It always looks good when you place a line in a chart. If I place a line in a chart back here, the point of control actually would extend to be an area where is roughly similar to where I'm pointing at right now. So you could say, well, the point of control, the meat of this structure, if I was going to go to the fixed range and just apply this, the point of control is where most of the volume occurred within this distribution, okay? Not a distribution structure, a distribution of where price was, right? Point of control where most of the volume was. Doesn't mean that that's the specific most important level. That's just fair value for that area. You can see how extending this forward, it's the meat of the range. Of course, if we're approaching it after losing it from the underside, that's going to sort of be an area we're going to have trouble with. It's going to be a sticky point, an area of friction, all the different ways that you can describe this. It's not a line, okay? You're always going to place a line on a chart at some point. Maybe this week it'll be the weekly line. Maybe next week it'll be the daily line or some other arbitrary line. And it'll show that maybe at some point price hits it perfectly twice. And then you're going to think, well, I used the close for that one last time. I have to use the closes moving forward, or I use the wicks. I have to use wicks, or I have to draw my trend lines like this because it worked last time perfectly. If you draw random lines on a chart, you're going to see something that looks like it confirms that level perfectly more often than not, even if you just do it completely random, right? If I just was to, take this chart right here, draw these lines over it, we know what the underlying chart is, but here's how many charts? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 lines right here, right? I'll just take this off. You're going to see some level of confluence with just a random line, right? This was actually one of the worst ones that I've done. I've done ones in the past that have literally just been perfect for multiple touches, and you could have told yourself a whole story, right? So the most important thing is it's market structure. In crypto, market structure is taken, it's thought of in such a precise way that you think market structure, the swing highs, the swing lows, that is market structure. That's market structure to a price action trader. Market structure is the way that the supply and demand is distributed, or how the market is actually set up, right? Is there a lot of supply? Is there a little bit of supply and a lot of demand? Okay, so that's what we're actually talking about when we're talking about market structure. A chart shows you that, right? But again, this area here was loose on the way up, right? In this move up for this weekly structure, we only closed that high. The following week, we closed higher, but then we dumped. The next week that led through a move, not the next week, the next major structure that led to a move that broke, we ended up closing below multiple times a prior swing point. So you can't just go off of one line in the sand. You can, with reasonable certainty, say that at specific price points, I call them lazy price points because it's very easy to go into your trading prompt or template and type in a whole number or round number, and it's a lot easier for people to think 10,000 as my stop versus 10,004, right? 10,460. So you'll see that around whole numbers, around very large even numbers like that, right? That it doesn't have to be even. It could be 9,555. That there is sort of this psychological anchor to those numbers, and there will actually be more volume at those numbers transacted than if you're looking at anywhere else within the footprint. So if we had a footprint chart and this is our footprint and here's 10,000, even if we make just complete waste of the level on the way up, right, price is moving up, you'll see that at 10K there was the most amount of volume that was triggered there. Sometimes the most amount of liquidations, because that's going to be an area where people are going to anchor that price level very quickly. It's also just as ease of use. It's easier to type in something without getting into an irrational number, right, with decimal points after and numbers afterwards. So that being said, this level to me it's still intact. This is an area where I'm expecting fake outs and all this type of behavior that we're having. That could change very quickly. The benefit of still sticking by this level is once it changes, it's obvious and it's very close. So if we lose this level, right, if we lose down here and we're back within this range, I'm targeting the range lows at that point. My long thesis for this area of market structure continuing at the same pace, under the same conditions, with the same considerations, that is secondary to my short position at that point. Unless you see something that develops to the contrary, right, that is extreme or that you just cannot deny at that point. When you see new information, you obviously have to weigh that accordingly. So Bitcoin for me is not something that's worth really putting too much thought in. I think it's going to range either way. More importantly, on the lower time frames, I have my lower time frame levels that haven't really changed much. If I'd say that some of the more important things right now on this chart to pay attention to are, now that we've had, that is alpha trend, turn on the Clark indicator just because it shows me the monthly and the weekly open. Now that we've had that monthly close at an important level, so we lost it now, right? So we're looking back at the quarterly and the monthly, which is the same. Let me move that. My mic is in the way of my button. Now that we've had the quarterly and the monthly close above this swing high, right? So that's important to people. Okay, that means that it's not to me as important as the fact that we broke it. But it is something that begins to trigger or signal a lot of systematic trading strategies and approaches, and even discretionary ones, right? So how they inform their bias. If we're able to get above that level, so as long as we are, where is this? Oh, it's because I'm I'm back on my high time frame trying to look at the monthly open on the monthly chart. As long as we are below this level, okay, I'm still looking for a short position. I don't think that it's necessarily done moving down. On the high time frame, different story, right? We're talking different levels. But on the lower time frame, I don't think that it's done moving down. We haven't really seen any kind of excess yet at the lows. So instead of going to Sierra right now, I'm going to put this chart on here. And what I'm talking about is excess, is when you have a tail like this at the bottom. So a tail like this, a tail like this. I might as well pull over my Sierra right now. Okay, something along the lines of, we're looking at this or like this. Okay, it's a buying tail. It means that the market came into an area and was completely bid up, right? There was a very one-sided response in that area, and it showed that area was, at that moment, nothing to mess with, right? Consider it like that. In simple terms, price is having trouble with that level. It's a level where, for now, it's contested. All right, so when we have something along the lines of this, which is by participation, this is a TPO chart. So, excuse me, not participation. That's when I say participation, I'm talking about volume. So the interaction between buyers and sellers. When you have a chart like this, where you spend a good amount of time at the lows, and you have a chart where you have a good amount of volume at the lows, that leads me to think that we're more prone to being accepted down here. So I'm just not ready right away to say that this is, an immediate long opportunity. If we're back above 6,000, 10,000, say if we're back above 6,000, if we're back above 10,646, my last entry for a short position that I ended up closing out but leaving that one open, so I have to clarify that. My last entry for that limit was up here, and it's sort of around the idea that we take this level out and then break back down anyway. If we come into this level and start consolidating above this high and we're close to that monthly open again, and this gets back to why I opened that up to begin with, that monthly open here, I think that we would poke above there, and at that point I don't think we would stop. I think that if we have this kind of correction in the face of this type of negative news, you can imagine that things are probably pretty sold at this point. So a lot of people are taking this in a very first order way of thinking, okay, Bitmex down, market bad, right? Crypto's going to, collapse another $2,000. So sentiment leads to positioning, and I think that we're probably having a good amount of people that are getting dominantly short, if not completely unexposed. And if you're unexposed and you're on the sidelines, you're the person who's left to chase price upward, right? If it starts moving upward. So I think we have that built-in buying pressure that is through sideline money and through involuntary closing from actual short covering. So for me on the lower time frame, that 10,646 level is important. If we start consolidating above there, I'll just cancel that short out. My short, I think, was at like 10,703. It's the last little bit of an order. I just left it for a scam wick. I could end up closing that out, honestly, before that even happens. But the reason why I don't think it's necessarily done moving down is because we don't have that excess response at the lows. We have some level of participation down there. There's a good amount of volume into the low. You don't necessarily have the signs yet that there's absorption. We had it on the low time frame, but that low time frame one looked like it unwound already. So that was from here to here. There was absorption at this low. Price ended up poking upward. We already got from this low, we already got a 2% move. So a lot of times if I start to see some type of lower time frame absorption, so if we're looking at CVD, for example, this is where we had that occur. So right here, notice delta continuously moving down as price is continuously trending upward. I don't just take the trade if I see that there is something that looks like a divergence setting up. I need to see that price is actually trading back above previous levels that it made in creating that divergence. So when we're looking at previous highs and lows, I need to see that we're overtaking that. When I have that type of trigger, I'm also going to keep in mind how much price has already moved from that low. If we're already 1.5, 2% away, there's a good chance that maybe 4 million, 5 million, 10 million contracts, they're unwound already, right? That they've maybe already voluntarily closed out without much market impact, or that they've been squeezed in the original portion of the move that is already behind us now. So after a move down like this, if you're looking at delta, if you're looking at CVD, just see, have we passed over that 1% threshold yet? Because you have to start thinking you're already starting to liquidate or forcefully, whether through voluntary action or involuntary action, cause people to close out those initial high leverage shorts. So that being said, that's a low time frame divergence. I don't see the signs of high time frame absorption yet, which I would need to see. Funding right now, it did look initially like traders were getting long again. Bitmex this is sort of a difficult situation to look at right now because Bitmex is normally the market that I primarily focus on for order flow data. So, this is something that I have to really sit down over and reevaluate. It's looking like Bybit and Binance futures are going to be my primary source when Bitmex begins to completely fall off the map. The trouble with Bitmex is right now, when you're looking at things like negative delta, a lot of it is actually just positions closing out. We're seeing that it's not necessarily shorts opening up on Bitmex as much as it is shorts closing out, leading into a decline in open interest. So it's not like new business is getting trapped on Bitmex, which is kind of the thing that I normally look for. So let's just say fair to say that we're still making a lower low, lower high on this low time frame. If we're back above 10,650, what that looks like to me, and if you could see on these levels right here, we'll take this volume off the chart, we'll take the weekly off the chart. All right, what we have then is these two lines, right? So that line at 646, remember, it's just a zone, right? It could be 655, it could be 659. This is the area that I'm looking for that to develop. If it doesn't just wick into there, right? I probably should just close out that short position anyway. But what I'd be looking for is that acceptance back into a prior range. That's what that is. This is a previous range that we were within. It is a previous composite. So we were there from the 25th, 26th, 27th. We had this deviation, sort of fell back within it. Don't worry about the slight deviations within here. What we're looking at is where value was established over time. The dominant amount of participation occurred within that area. Not overly focused on what is occurring at one specific price point. I'm looking for the distribution, right? An area, never a point. So I think that the lows would ultimately be cleaned up, this low right here, before we have any kind of further move upward. We're in very close proximity to already a pretty significant low. So what I would expect to develop is maybe if we get a pop upward, right? If we move into this level, and then we make one more attempt at this low. Not to say that that's written in the sand, but it's something that I'm definitely considering or at least preparing for. And that's really how you have to be when you're trading. You have to have your areas that you're looking to do business. You have to have the hypotheticals that could occur, what you would do, and have all these things planned out in advance. There's one thing that I would say is that a lot of new traders, they think that they have to be in position from where price currently is. So you're thinking, I think this is a long. I think it's a long from where we are, right? It's kind of a vague idea. I think this is a long from where we are. I'm going to get long now. No, if you think it's a long and your bias right now, maybe your higher time frame signaling is indicating that it's a long, you still should have some sort of defining feature to filter out to not filter out, but to get in position at a better predefined area. And meaning if the price starts moving away from you, you have a method that maybe you start to get into position more aggressively, but you don't just get into position where price currently is, unless the setup is perfect, right? But a lot of times I think people think long or short, okay, it's either or, I'm going to get into position, rather than waiting for the setup to occur. So I have the levels that I am waiting for. So I think that we'll probably come down and sweep that low. So 10,370 level. And then I also have this 10,650. Now, mind you, I was in a short position to begin with. I still have a short position up here. The level of response, just say that I keep this on for the next few hours. The level of response upon, let's say, moving up to this level will dictate whether or not I keep this open, okay, or close it out and look for that long. But where we currently are right now, I'll do neither, right? I will not take a short position here. I will not take a long position here, even if I think we're maybe setting up for a long, right? I don't think that it's a good area for me to get into a long position, because if we're just looking at the simple fact that this is still just on the lower time frames, the lower low and lower high, and we also have a more defining area within here. This is a pretty dense level, okay? This entire level right here was a previous range. I would rather see that we make our way through that, right? Then potentially come into this level again and come down here. And then at that point, I'm stuck in a long, right? I would rather see that there's some type of base established up there, some type of strength before getting into position. So let's see. This is right now, we've gone over BTC. Let's go over some of the alts. Okay, so lower time frame BTC starting to look a little bit stronger, but I'm going to wait for a little bit more evidence, right? It's the cost of doing business. Would rather have something like this, or would rather have something like, and don't ever think that when I draw something like this, even on Twitter or even on this, the idea is what is important, that we come towards the low aggressively and we retake this level. All right, and then you have 3 moves down. And a lot of times when you get a move like this, and then a move like this, and then this, it sets you up for your strength upward, right? And this is sort of a lower time frame reversal pattern. It can come in either a W, or it could come in, I don't want to say not a head and shoulders, but you'll see that it starts to print the reversal pattern on the low time frames. So let's go through some of the questions. Shout out from Brisbane. What's up, buddy? Said hi to you. I didn't realize you wrote that, though. Okay. Nagy here for the first time. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to start doing these live streams. I think I'm going to start doing these multiple times a week. So we'll do public live streams on BlockRoots Twitter. Get to know you guys more. It's a little bit more personable. Allows for more back and forth. I think you learn better rather than putting up a video where I think I have an idea of what you should learn for the day. Maybe that's no longer applicable to you. Maybe you're better off asking questions at this point. If you've been following BlockRoots for a long time now, maybe it's getting a little bit bland. Maybe you think that me talking about CVD, you're done with that. You're on your journey already and you have different questions. So I think the benefit of doing live streams will be to cater to everybody's needs, because, I'd expect that you guys are learning by now. Okay. All right. Let's see. Bitmex can offer to pay any fine in BTC. Yeah, sure they can. Yeah, that's, this is very interesting. It's kind of like what a last 24 hours, right? The president of the United States gets COVID on top of this major systematic risk event. And it's not that it's systematic. So systematic risk, it doesn't have a direct effect. It's got this psychological effect on anyone who perceives this as maybe a Mt. Gox. I could already tell you that it's probably most of it already priced in. Find them very professional. That's why I asked. Okay. Let's see. What is your outlook on crypto in the long term, 6 months to a year ahead? Considering the dollar index is going up, does it mean crypto is bearish in the upcoming months? No. So my outlook on crypto is different than longer term outlooks on crypto from pretty much most of the people that I think I interact with. For me, a long term investment is at least 5 years, more like 10. When I'm thinking long term investments, I'm thinking the thing that allows me and my wife and kids to, travel the world, right? Not to say we don't, my wife and I don't travel already, but I'm thinking like retirement money. Things that I'm not, I don't want to touch, long-term portfolio, sort of all-weather type of portfolio, as Ray Dalio says. And in traditional markets, you don't see this sort of myopic nearsightedness that you see in crypto. And it's because everything is skewed in crypto because the cycles move so fast. Now, in traditional markets, a long-term investment is not a year chart. People don't look at a year chart and think that that's long-term. That is, some people do, right? If you're a day trader, it's all a matter of perspective. But for the most part, long-term investments are 2, 3, 5, and upward. Some people look at a 2-year chart or a 5-year chart or a 10-year chart. Now, for crypto, that's the same thing for me. And it's not for all of crypto. I think that the incumbents right now, the ones that are consistently doing well, I think LINK, for example, I think ETH, I think BTC, I think there's room for all of those. I think that in the long run, that any kind of asset that has already built up this sort of network effect, that has a very low float, so when I say low float, meaning low supply, very reflexive, I think that in the long term, Bitcoin is going to continuously go up, and 10 years from now, it'll be absolutely above the all-time high. Now, why do I say that? Because in a very low float asset that has the sort of halving dynamics that it does, which is not something you see in traditional markets at all, even linear adoption, linear accumulation, any kind of linear growth over time, the price is going to go up no matter what, right? Let's say that even people adopt crypto and they lose their wallets over time, right? You can imagine that increases the price of Bitcoin, as long as there's no increased sell pressure. So the more people take it off the market, the better off you are in terms of long-term prices. So that is, to me, it's a one-way trip. I think that it's going to continuously go up. I think it has the same sort of long-term positive drift that equity markets do. The important thing is, what kind of investment is it over a 10-year time horizon? In the next 10 years versus in the next 2 years, if crypto goes to 50K, it's not the same, right? 50K, you might say, well, what happens if I told you, excuse me, I'm drinking. I bought my wife, since she now owns a catering company, goes to Restaurant Depot, which is like only for people that own restaurants. And I'm sure plenty of you guys have maybe worked in restaurants, you know this. So we just bought like an entire refrigerator worth for my refrigerator that I keep for all the things that are nearby my office. An entire refrigerator basically of these little Pellegrinos. So the problem is they make me a little burpy. That being said, what was I saying? 50K 10 years from now is not the same as 50K 2 years from now. Time value of money is important, right? If I could tell you that you could double your money in 20 years or 10 years, you wouldn't be impressed, right? That's not an impressive, rate of return. But I do think that Bitcoin is a very long-term part in your portfolio, if not just for digital gold, right? If you have, think of millennials now, think of Generation X, think of anyone who's not a baby boomer. When they are retiring, when they're building up their sort of store of value in their portfolio, their 401k, everything that is important for them in the long term, do you think that they're going to go with sort of the old way of thinking or the newer way of thinking? Just like technology, I think that crypto is going to move in the same fashion. Okay. Legacy algos are trading crypto. Absolutely. It means that the relationship, since it is established as, existing, that there are hedge funds that are trading crypto on behalf of the relationship. There are hedge funds, that are trading based on this relationship existing. You have to understand that in traditional markets, there's not a lot of yield to go around besides to get into equities. There's no yield, right? Your only option is to really buy the S&P. That is sort of like the risk-free rate right now. Tech stocks are like the risk-free rate. And I say that, half jokingly, but they just continue to go up and up, right? That is your baseline rate of return. So crypto is like a higher beta play on that. So a lot of equities traders, a lot of traditional hedge people that came from traditional markets, they're looking at crypto as sort of like tech 2.0, a play on tech, right? A play on a higher beta tech, in that when the S&P does well, crypto does well. So I'm going to allocate towards that because there's more upside, right? There's potentially more downside, but in terms of a broad swath of positions, I'm going to put forward a little bit of risk in that area because, on the off chance that it returns 10 times versus my investments over here, which might return 12%, 8%, and so forth. So there are definitely sort of these beta plays that are occurring where algos are following one for the other. Absolutely. It's not the same speed though. The algo activity that you see in traditional markets is like predictive almost. You could have an FOMC meeting or a Fed meeting, and there's an algo that's built around any kind of thing that's showing up on the screen, any kind of type or audio, interpreting that data and then turning it into a buy or sell decision. I don't think you have that really in crypto yet. You don't have that speed. There's a bit more latency. Okay, let's see. Phemex. Yeah, no, it would be great to have. There's so many features that I could think of with the exchanges that I think would make everyone's life easier, because I think that if I know something that would work well, I think that it would help other people. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of things in traditional markets that are not available that are actually available to traditional market traders that are not available to crypto traders. It's weird. And then when they do list them, it's like, oh my God, the exchange has this special feature, but it's actually not a special feature. It's something that has been available to people that have been trading on, E-Trade for the last 10 years, right? Or TD Ameritrade, Thinkorswim, or Charles Schwab, or Lightspeed, or any one of these platforms. So I think you're going to see hopefully more and more functionality come onto the exchanges, or that they support it. But I think there's sort of, again, it's a balance between providing new assets and dealing with compliance issues and navigating this space, which is always changing. And you're choosing to do one thing that they're prioritizing over the other. And I think that exchanges work the same like people in that regard. So I gave a list of things that I think that would be great for, our partners. And I think we're starting to see those roll out. They're absolutely rolling those out. Josh mentioned, you could basically thank Uni and the DeFi pairs to Josh. So, they definitely listen, and they're trying to put out a great product, and they are. So anything algo related, I think if it's not there right now, you'll see in the near future. Do you think Chart, if you had to choose one investment, Shroom or Uni for the next 3 months? If I had to choose one investment for the next 3 months, it would be Shroom. I don't know personally a lot about Shroom. I got out of my Shroom position. I think I 7x'd. I think I might have just under 7x'd. I bought it because Josh said it was a good investment, honestly. We trust each other like that. Each of us are doing our own thing. You can't have an eye on everything in the investment universe. So that's a great thing about having a great partner. They're like a co-pilot. They know what's going on over here. You know what's going on over there. You trust each other. I bought Shroom and it went up well before even, Josh even mentioned it on Twitter. I didn't even want to mention it. And it's just under 7x. So I took profits on it. It's something that I'm actively looking at right now to get back into. I don't know a lot about Shroom from a fundamental standpoint, but what I do pay attention to is how the liquidity changes from day to day. I'm always looking at it. I'm always looking in the Telegram. I don't talk in it, but I always look in it. I'm always looking at the wallet holders, how that's changing. And what I notice is it's kind of a community-driven platform and community-owned. So the important thing with any kind of large wallet holders is, a lot of the times there's early people that came in and they have an awesome cost basis. So they got in at 0 and it's at, it's 100 times that value right now, just to give you an example. They don't care if they sell, if it drops 20% from here, or if they knock the price down. They don't really care. They're still up, 100x, right? There are people that are consistently, buying Shroom. It drops, they buy, and they're tossing a substantial amount of money at it. And they're rising up in terms of the holder list. Now, they're not going to want to, I don't think, get in and out of position, incurring that slippage unless there's more upside. So I think that you're building in sort of this holder mentality because their cost basis is not the best as someone who, let's say it was developer owned and the funds weren't locked up and you have a bunch of people that are well ahead of you and they could dump on you. It's not like that. My thing is, I got out of position. A day later when I got out of Shroom, I was like, fuck me. Excuse me. Because it went back up. And then, I had a pretty big position. So substantial market impact. For me to buy back in, it was kind of like, I was doing the thing where I'm looking at it go up and I'm thinking, I just talked about this a week ago where you have to be willing to buy higher. But I'm anchored on the idea of owning, 1% of the supply again. And, that's, it happens. But I'll be getting back in Shroom. Uni, I don't necessarily, it's not printing and it's not showing an immediate response, right? That's the first thing I want to see, an immediate response. I don't see it with Uni. I do think that it's going to be an incumbent as a long-term participant or as a long-term player in the space, or asset, excuse me. But as far as getting in a position right here, I don't have my trigger for Uni yet, but we'll get to that chart in a second. With Shroom, so you might be thinking immediately, well, you just talked about how there's sort of a contingency with Uni, but there's not with Shroom. You're not looking at a chart. Well, Shroom is not on exchanges really yet. The technicals matter, but they don't necessarily matter. The chart is continuously moving upward. That's important. Levels aren't really there yet. So a lot of levels are they're psychological levels. They can't be defended yet the same way. I think that it's not as important level-wise that Shroom, for example, lost a low or something. 5 seconds later, someone's going to buy 20,000 worth of it, and it'll be 30% higher. And that's not going to have any bearing on their decision to get into it. Okay. Do you think charting on Bitmex is affected since the recent outflow due to U.S. legal version? So charting on Bitmex, I chart on Bitmex. I was paying attention to Bitmex just from the beginning. Bitmex is, in terms of my opinion, it had priority from a volume and a open interest standpoint. That can all change. That is probably going to change. I would just look at Bybit or Bybit. I look at every exchange, honestly, because I look at Bybit, I look at Bitmex, I look at Binance, I look at OKX, I look at Coinbase, because I like to see the price differences. I like to pay attention to the changes in basis. Bitmex obviously always had more of a wick, right? It had more gunpowder on the exchange. If anything, I don't think that's going to be a tremendous difference what you chart on. Chart on your native platform. If you're trading on one platform, it's really weird for people who come into crypto from traditional markets and there's this really segmented market, right, for this asset where you have one exchange that has this price, another exchange that has this. It's not a lot of central or, there is an index and oracles that are used to establish that, but there's no one agreement, right? So if you're trading on something like Phemex, for example, the best thing to do would be to get a feel with the type of overthrow you could expect on Phemex, right? If you're getting filled based on a wick, does Phemex have smaller wicks compared to Bitmex or larger? Well, Phemex has smaller wicks, right? So you can't be looking at a level that you might expect to get run off of a Bitmex chart and apply that same reasoning to Phemex. You can get away with looking at any chart and having an idea of what areas are important. I still think that if you're going to lower time frame trade, you have to fine-tune it with fine-tuned price action on the low time frames. It's not that important, so I don't want to go too far into it because it could become a game of talking in circles about it. Not the most important thing. I, as a force of habit, still look to the XBT pair. I'll change it because, at this point, those wicks, are not really important to me. But, yeah. I worry about increase of violent. Okay, so I answered that. Yes. Okay, so nice entries. One person's pain, another person's pleasure. So yeah, there's an argument for and against that. Okay, add stuff on Discord. Yeah, another thing about Shroom, the supply. Very simple. Supply. People perceive that as a scarcity as important. Everything is psychology, right? So that is something that's definitely a plus. I don't know about Centivate either. I see a lot of people making like presentations on it. That reminds me of something that has already moved and people are trying to move it again. If people like something and it's a good thing, it reflects more often than not. Charts don't reflect everything, but the chart should be moving up. It's sort of like, hope I don't hurt anyone's feelings, sort of like Ripple, right? If Ripple had massive fundamental value, I don't care if it was, it would show up in the chart, right? At some point, it's going to show sign of strength, you know? At least in this long period of time, someone has had an adequate amount of time to accumulate it. CC, do you think watching order flow from just the exchange you're trading on is useful? Given so the reason why I paid, and then after this, I'm going to start getting into the assets because we're an hour in, so we have time to do the alt. The reason why I paid attention to Bitmex is because, excuse me, this is a good thing about live streams. You get the sort of, unfiltered, unvarnished version of me, right? I'm indigestion, exclamatory once in a while, no cuts. So the reason why I pay attention to order flow data on Bitmex, first and foremost, not the thing that, I only paid attention to, is because it had, in terms of open interest, it was 1 and 2, top 1 and 2. So open interest, if you think about what I'm looking for a lot of the times when I'm looking for lower time frame, looking at lower time frame setups to be substantiated, the last part of it to be substantiated by order flow. So I go from market structure, developing value. I look at absorption or auction over a range a lot of the time, and then I'll go down to, not a lot of the time, just primarily this is the order of operations. And then the last thing I do is go down to the lower time frame to sort of try to fine tune it with a footprint chart. That footprint chart, the idea is I want to see either the sign of absorption there or the sign of someone who's getting trapped, right? I want to see some level of imbalance through a level, below or above. The benefit of looking at trap traders on Bitmex is just you're looking at where the traders are getting the most trapped, right? Where the most size is thrown around, where the most gunpowder is packed into that keg. So I know that, hey, if we have this setup where there's a significant level of market structure, major contextual level, prices has passed through it, gunned through it, retrading above the level. And on Bitmex, I see that, there's 30 million contracts that got short below there. That to me is in terms of priority of information, that sits at the top because everyone else is going to follow when that unwinds in the short term, right? The spot market, I think over time, fundamentals and spot market over time are what take priority, right? But in the short term, for short-term setups, you could bet that the traders that are trapped on Bitmex, for 30 to 50 million contracts, whatever, imagine some massive move, those are going to move the rest of the market. The rest of the market's going to respond to that. That's sort of the dog that wags the tail, right? The rest of the market is the tail at that point. So now it's a matter of finding the exchange that leads by open interest. Now, just as a heads up, all these exchanges trade pretty closely in line. If you'll see that there's really no idiosyncratic difference between Bitmex and Bybit, right? If I looked at Bybit, I would probably see the same thing. Just from a psychological standpoint, just from a personal preference, coming from traditional markets, I would want to have the best access to the best data feed, right? I would want to know that what I'm looking at was the primary mover of the market. And that had been so long, Bitmex, and now it's kind of obviously drifting off into the sunset. But all the other exchanges are going to be kind of the same either way. They're all, anyone who is, it's not going to be one trader on just Bitmex that is going to be moving the market. It's going to be a substantial amount of, the aggregate of activity that is going to be shared across other exchanges as well. So it's not like there's anything that is anomalistic that is going to occur on, meaning an anomaly that's going to occur on just Bitmex. It didn't occur on Bybit, right? Said that so for Bybit. What you can see is that there are differences sometimes between the behavior on spot markets and the derivatives markets. And those discrepancies I'm looking for either way. So I always have, when we're doing these streams, when I am sharing charts on TradingView, I have multiple screens at home, right? And this is the most easy to do these videos on. Everyone recognizes this chart. If I point out a level, you could think very quickly to go to your TradingView chart and find the same exact thing. You know, it's pretty hairy on the rest of my screens, right? I have my Sierra set up. I have my this ladder set up here. So I have a bunch of different things that I'm paying attention to at any one given time. So yeah, Bitmex is not necessarily a priority anymore. It's better to start looking at some of the ones that are probably going to be taking its place just in terms of priority. It doesn't mean Bitmex is going to become irrelevant. Do you think that a stimulus gets passed before election, or are they just posturing? It's tough because this election cycle and this election year is feels like it has a lot more at stake than any other election, right? This is very unique. So you don't know what kind of games are being played. And it messes with your head. You think a lot of things if you're like myself and you're thinking, well, I mean, honestly, to think the first thought I thought was, does Donald Trump really have coronavirus, or is this the 4D way to play chess, right? Yeah, it's a really sad thought, but it's like, you ever see the movie Wag the Dog? I didn't mean to say the dog wag the tail analogy before and then think of that movie. But it's just, it's an important thing to think of, right? You see the president comes out a week before election. I'm cured. It was because I took this, and then, name drop Pfizer, name drop, Johnson & Johnson, equities through the roof. You never know. I don't know. I don't really have too much an informed opinion on the stimulus getting passed. I hate to get too far into that. It's just sort of conjecture, and I'm not the person who could really give you. I don't think a lot of people could give you that informed answer. But it would be nice. It would be nice. See you, Josh. I'll talk to you later, bud. This market is in need of an aggregated chart platform. Yes, but I don't think it should be aggregated. I think it should be a aggregated leader of derivatives exchanges, maybe top 3, and then the spot, right? But I don't even want to, because there are times when there's details worth paying attention to. I don't actually. I wouldn't really want that, because there are times when any of the heavy order flow guys will tell you, Timeless can get into it too. There's times when you'll see that the activity on OKX is completely different than the activity on Coinbase, and that's for every time that I saw some type of signed order flow on OKX that led to a very soon to follow directional movement that was actionable, right? I'd be watching the tape and OKX would flash 3 million buy orders in a row, and I would just get long, and sure enough, price would follow soon after. So I wouldn't know if I would really want an aggregated one. I would like the option to, put it that way. You have the option to aggregate them. If you don't, keep them apart. Joe says order book, lower crypto prices in coming days, weeks. Scary. Cool. Yeah, I'm always suspect of some of the platforms that are coming out now too. I got to know if they're up to speed, especially order book stuff. That can make a big difference if you're not seeing the updated prices in terms of resting order flow, which is not something I've paid too much attention to. Let's take a look at the charts, guys. Okay, so first things first, LINK. Let's just go to LINK. We'll run through this really quickly. LINK, I just added my positions. I had positions yesterday. I canceled some of the positions out. I had 4 positions. I got filled for one of them. I ended up moving the other 3 down and moved them again this morning. I'm looking to get involved in LINK. I think that LINK, just to show you where these levels are derived from, all right, this level right here, these are actually, I had these levels drawn off of this low. This area right here is obviously your most important resistance right now, okay? Impulsive move off of the low, out of a significant area within market structure, within this move on the way up. I think that LINK is not going to be just moving up from here. I think that we have sort of this sideways wedge pattern that we'll probably print, where we make hopefully to fill my positions, my spot positions, something like this, test the high again, consolidate, and over time get this break to the upside. But what that is contingent upon is really just that 1090, say $11 area. Until we're above there, I'm focused on the range that's forming. I don't think that it's going to be a range with LINK that we're going to come down here and really revisit this. If we do, I'm not too sure I'd be confident in the positions I intended on filling to begin with, or did fill at that point if we came all the way down here. So I think that we're going to get some sort of upward grinding structure. These are sort of caricatures of the lines, I guess, that I should be drawing more precisely, or exaggerated lines. But I think that this is your most important swing point. Very technical asset, right? It's very obvious. This requires no real masters in trading to figure out. That is your pivot point. In terms of, what do you think the key aspects? I'll answer that in a second. SNX. Just take a sip of this. SNX has been an awesome trend the entire way up. I mean, if you look at this structure, you had almost a year's worth of, not a year, but coming from March, from that major move down, you have all the way from March, up until August, just constant trend upward. Just sort of this monotonically positive move to the upside. On the daily time frame, forming a pattern that we've seen before in alts, where it looks like this is going to be the wedge that we ultimately have a break to the upside for. Everyone is looking for this break. I think that we could get a move that follows through, gives us maybe a setup for that, but then ends up taking out this low anyway. Either way, I think that SNX synthetics is bullish, fundamentally speaking and technically speaking. This is not a very violent sell-off whatsoever. It's not slippery. So slippery is your rolls, right? You know what slippery looks like. You know what it looks like when it's occurring in real time. Price is kind of at the level and it's not doing anything, and it's like you're thinking, do I short it at market right now? This is showing signs of strength, right? Even if we look at the daily right now, starting to see that maybe this is a higher low forming, I would probably get back into this. I was in a position a long time ago, one of the first newsletters, if we close back above sort of that 510 level. At that point, it becomes, I think, more obvious. It's in the rear view, but it becomes more certain, I think, that this is making its way back up to that 770, 750 area. This is your swipe chart. Swipe was looking semi-decent until yesterday. Why do I say swipe is looking semi-decent? We have this cluster right here. This is your weekly swing point. Weekly cluster. It looked like maybe we were going to get one of these moves back above the level, maybe back up towards that 25,808 area. Right now it needs a lot more. You can still see that yesterday was looking better, but it looks like we're coming back down to this low. This is something I'm keeping my eye on though. Not writing this off yet. SXP again. Okay, this is against the dollar. Again, this is a major area within market structure. So the same pivot, this low over here. This was the area where I anticipated was going to be sort of the signaling for a sign of strength, something like that. Alts are very basic for me, right? Alts, for the most part, I get long when the market does something like this. On a weekly time frame, we lose a level, we reclaim a weekly level. I just put on a very loose stop and get long. For reclaims, it's the same thing. It's a matter of people catching on to this chart. You share it enough, people share it enough. I'm in this position, everyone else is in the position. At that point, the trade is very obvious, and it becomes one of those momentum plays. Let's see. And I don't mean share the chart like pump and dump it, because that's the reason why I wouldn't share Shroom. But I just mean, as soon as that technical setup becomes obvious, it's slightly late. And at that point, the trade is already starting to take off. SRM is not looking too hot. SRM is something that I was confident in multiple times. This is sort of an example of the chart I was referring to, or a type of chart I was referring to this morning on my Twitter, where I was saying, everyone is anticipating they're going to find the bottom, right? They're looking at a rounding out structure, not realizing something can continuously make a rounding out structure further and further out through time and continue to move lower. So I don't want to anticipate a turn with any of these things. With this, my level is $2, right? My level is $2. We go to the weekly structure. When we go to the daily structure, we go back here. This is the first swing in this move upward. This is a major area of support. Before we had any kind of major breakdown, it's just got a good amount of confluence between here, besides the fact that it is the most recent high, right? This is not your high. This is the high I'm paying attention to in this pattern of, right, lower highs and lower lows. So I think, again, very obvious once the turn is here, but I think at that point it's a little bit more certain. And the price of let's just say the price of, what's it called, confirmation in alts is worth paying. Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is dangerous because Wi-Fi is now closing through So let me just adjust this because TradingView bugs me when it auto scales. So this is your daily chart. This is your weekly chart. So weekly level, right? Already lost a weekly level. Okay, so this is now below multiple weekly lows. It's not really saying in any way that you could look at this. It's hard to look at this in a good light, right? Unless you're deciding that the market is going to, turn because of just will, right? Lower prices typically beget lower prices. Higher time frame signals, sort of things that a lot of people will base their overall bias on, are not really worth fading, right? So unless this is your weekly low, right, and you do something like this, get that close through, I think sometimes that's the trap, right? You get the close through, you signal a lot of traders to go short at that point, but it's not a significant close through. This is a significant weekly close through. Not only have we closed through that low, right? Okay, broken market structure significantly. We're below a previous weekly low. We're below the most recent weekly low. Not to get too into some of the things that I use for my lower time frame trading, but put it this way. Yesterday's close, yesterday's open is pretty significant. Okay, this week's open, this week's close is pretty significant. These are not things that are uncommon, but this is just saying that it's not doing a good job of holding itself up. Looking at this on the most recent daily swing low, I look at this daily swing low down here as being one of the more important ones. Okay, that's your weekly structure as well. This is an area where you had a good amount of bidding. Very strong move out of here. That's fine. Very nice pivot. This looks more like sort of that trap, right? The trap that I was just talking about, I wouldn't want to use as a signal to get short, right? You get a close below the level. It's not a very significant close. You get a very big abrupt movement outward, to the upside. Now we're back here. If this was your deviation, there's no reason we should be back here again. Okay, this is a heavy thing. It's a heavy asset because it's not as accessible as some of the pairs that have been on exchanges forever. There still are people that are trading this on a DEX. It is not necessarily that liquid. It's very low float, so it's very reflexive. If the market starts spilling with this, it can move very quickly. I think it's a dangerous thing to anticipate a turn in before you get one. So with YFI, I think that I would rather see this back above 22. So 22,100, I think, very cleanly invalidates that sort of short setup or that weakness thesis. I was just trying to articulate. It's not looking good. I think that we're probably going to see 16. YFI was it's a unicorn, which is funny to say because it's on Uniswap, right? The unicorn. But I think that it was a big hype play, and it got away from everybody. I think that it is the DeFi sort of the leader of DeFi, right? It's the Bitcoin of the DeFi space, if that's the way to put it. And if so, then this was its major run up, and it has a bigger correction. I think. I'm not too confident in this, but price can change that story. Uni, same deal. This is at a pretty significant low. Okay, this is really the only low, right? So if we're looking at this on the daily, it's not even on the weekly. It's not even really there established yet. This is the only low we really have to go off of. There's a huge gap down here. No real reason to think that anyone's going to be bidding this up back within this level. I mean, you could look at this on the lower time frame. You'll see some sort of cluster consolidation, but really actually there's not much at all. So this daily level, and the good thing about it is, again, this is the concept of not being in position where we currently are and waiting for your setup, right? So this daily level right here, let's say we get a strong close through here. Right now we're under it, right? So zoom out, scale this. This would be bad, right? Closing below this level would be pretty significant, okay? If we close above that, as a caveat, that does not mean that I think that it's a long back up here, right? If we close above this, maybe I'll look to take a long setup, all right? Back up to somewhere around here, okay? Somewhere around 415. So if you look at this on the low time frames, the idea with that is, this is an area where we're having trouble with. Very obvious underside test, okay? Major pivot point out of this low right here. Again, this is when we talked earlier about Bitcoin and excess and the market showing a response, a buying tail. That's it, right? Market tested this area. The buyers said no, and they kicked prices up violently. No violent response is a bad sign, right? So if we do claim back above this level, begin to show strength in the lower time frames, which we're not, because you can see right here it's already beginning to show this decline. If we start closing back above here, let's say 395, then the long setup is there. That is the first long. That is the first sticky point. I don't want to extrapolate beyond that because it could make lower highs all the way down. And until it closes somewhere back above, 440, 450, I don't want to say that there's any bigger plays. And even then, if it closes back above 440, 450, I'm still looking at 520, right? Level to level. Now, you might think that level to level is not a sophisticated way of trading, and trading has to be very difficult. Well, this is retail driven. This is retail driven. Your VCs, your initial investment people, they're all unloading anyway. So you're trading against people that take sort of the same higher time frame signals that you do. Or at least that is the most extreme application. Okay, that is the slowest moving thing, but you could be certain that that is one of the most dominant. So if we're approaching an area where there's going to be a lot of selling pressure, why hold through that area, right? Have your investment bag, that's fine, but for trading, that's the area to consider that it's going to be a little bit stickier, or at least be a speed bump. At least you start managing the trade there. DOT, same thing. DOT looking a little bit stronger since I shared it this morning, but this is the most important low to me. So if we look at this on the weekly, there's really not any kind of major weekly pivot points or major weekly clusters until we get back up here. But still, DOT has been making lower lows in terms of the weekly, in terms of our extremes. And refining this on more of the daily time frame, I don't want to say that this, that this low is the low to pay attention to from where we currently are. So if you are looking at this right now and you're thinking, well, the daily is going to close above this low, maybe it's setting up again. I would pay attention to more maybe a setup from here to 450, but even then, I'm not interested in DOT. Not yet for any longer term positions. I was when it showed signs of strength, but for me, DOT needs to be above 450 for me to really start getting aggressive. I just get very hesitant with alts and trying to call the bottom, especially when they've moved considerably. We're above sort of this gap, right? This is your gap within market structure. You might not think that that's big, right? But that is, 20% drop. So if I can't define my risk in a nice way, I don't want to be in a position. Anything that you're buying down here is off of, a swing failure of this low. It's not even that attractive of a swing failure setup. So yeah. MTA. Okay, MTA, nice turn. MTA setting up nicely in terms of lower time frame price action, right? If you get right into this, okay, what levels do you see immediately? Your lows right here and this major pivot, okay? This was almost, this structure, very bullish move up. You get that engulfing 4 days to follow, not engulfing, but, if this was progress, this certainly is anti-progress, okay? The first sign of strength on the lower time frames of a turnaround is on this chart right here. And we'd have to look at, longer, higher time frame chart. So let's go to Uniswap Vision. This is just one of the platforms. Oh, it's already on MTA. So this is just, this is the longer time frame chart, and this puts things in perspective still, right? This is still very localized to this area. Okay, this is beginning to show a sign of strength. What you need to have is obviously some base that is now formed over that $3 level. Okay, roughly that $3 level. But in terms of the setup that we kind of get to take advantage of first when price is declining, one of the first setups is the break of the, the major low across exchanges on charts. So this is your major low, right? As far as charts are concerned, this is your major low down here. Anything that now is able to maintain structure after moving below that and now above. So let's say we get that set up above 3. I think that you could start to look at 450 again. Do I have any guarantees above that? No, but it's starting to show more than those other charts we were just looking at. It's starting to show strength, right? You have lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. Now maybe a slightly higher low, maybe a slightly higher low forming right here, and maybe a slightly higher high. So this is something to just keep in your chart, right? Or keep on your chart to monitor moving forward. HNS, this chart, I don't know who shared it, but it looks like it's not worth applying TA to. It is so loose. Just look at each one of these daily candles. that's massive, right? The smallest daily candle on this is, 10% roughly, right? And the max of the range is 52, not 50. Well, it's actually it's from here to here, excuse me. These are just, this is not a chartable asset really. It's very liquid. You have to have a strong belief in this to get in it. I don't know anything about it. This is continuous, just secular decline right now. Not secular decline, but there's nothing about this yet that shows strength curve. So if you're buying this right now, you're telling yourself that you're smarter than the market and you're going to capture the bottom. It's just not worth trying to do that. What do you need to see with curve? I think you guys sort of get the drift at this point. Just break this concept down into simple terms. The idea of progress, right? Progress downward meant that we are continuously printing new lows, new highs. So if this is our most recent pivot point, okay, then this should act as resistance, roughly, or at least below here. So if you start to see that we're treating this as support, okay, that is maybe the first sign of your higher low that is forming. At that point, though, for me, if I'm looking at curve or CRV, excuse me, it's curve, right? I would not consider getting into any kind of position unless, I should say as a caveat also, that, or just as a heads up, not so much a caveat, the ranges can form within here. It doesn't mean that all these need to occur like this and show signs of strength. We could look for a range to form within here. So let's say we get something like this. Okay. If you get something like this, then maybe you take, after you're printing in equal highs and you get this structure that forms like this, then maybe you take that swing at the low, right? You long right here. Okay, anticipating that maybe then there's a little bit more substance behind saying that maybe it's starting to bottom, right? Because at this point, it's not making lower lows and lower highs, right? Downward. It's not making progress upward, but it's at kind of a stalemate. So CRV not looking good. Not looking good against BTC either. Ocean, not a whole lot here. Just looking at your most recent weekly cluster. What the hell goes on with my mouth sometimes? Yeah, it's actually more like this. This is just, look at this. If we look at this on a volume distribution chart, you'll probably see that it's within those levels, the value area. Yeah, so I don't even have to, at this point, this stage of my career, I don't even need to put this on. I could tell you where it is either way. So this is a very obvious balance range we're forming, which is great, but it's not right now that I would want to get into position. If I was looking to get in position with Ocean, at least now, since we're ranging, might present good opportunity to get long at a test of this low again if you're expecting that, there's a good amount of mean reversion in this left. But at least with this, now that this balanced value area is forming, or this area of balance is forming, and this is over the course of, this is going back to the beginning of September, at least now there's a whole lot more substance behind taking a breakout of this level. So this was a rejection. Okay, price made its way through, closed through, but you have this engulfing candle afterward. I don't think that you would do that as, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 times around. So I'd keep an eye on that 3819 level, but right now it's in the center of a range. This is looking decent, but I don't know anything about it. EOS, oof. EOS not looking too hot, right? Not looking too hot at all. EOS chart makes me want to just look. Maybe it's ugly. Where's the drawing tool? Here or all the way down here? This major low back in 2017, that's kind of irrelevant now. Recency does matter. Unless the level is very significant, in terms of alts, recency does matter. So this is not doing anything to help its case. If anything, your most significant level, this is a weekly structure, right? So if we're looking at maybe taking advantage of a trade within the previous range, you could say that, isolate it to sort of this area right here. Just kind of highlight this box to get down on low time frames. So clearly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lost the level. So anything that comes back within here, yes, opportunity to at least take a play to the midpoint of the range, 2840. So above 2570 up to 2840, and you have yourself, you have yourself a 12% trade, which I think people act like is not a good thing. Crypto is just completely fucked up people's minds in terms of, of expectations. But yeah, you could start playing into that mean reverting sort of pattern back within this range. But still, the higher time frame setup with EOS is, as it would sound, if we're saying that the range is from target to target, a lower time frame trade. Well, the higher time frame trade begins when we begin to overtake that major higher time frame pivot. So EOS has some work to do. And if you're asking me if I think it actually is going to do it, I don't think so. I think that anything that was cooked before DeFi, if DeFi is kind of cooked right now, I think that it is cooked for sure. YFL was looking good when there was a big buy, and then it just completely retraced it. YFL has some kind of fundamental developments, but right now your YFL level is your 555 level, and until that, I think DeFi is kind of screwed right now for the short term. I don't expect to just. I'm not going to try to play anticipating any reversals. I'm just playing off a structure. Stake. All right, stake is kind of approaching an area where I would expect a decent response. I don't know anything about this, but even if we were looking at something like a fib, that's probably around the 5 fib, right? Which is not something I necessarily use, but from breakout, no, this is skewed as hell. Yeah, even from the low. What was I thinking? This has just made such a how big has this move been? Oh, okay. This is a decent sized move that's already been put in. Here we go. I mean, this is already making it. I think that this is probably going to come all the way back down to this level, right? But when you're looking at it on a log chart, that's why I was all wonky at it on the log chart. So this level right here, which is what we're testing right now, but I don't know anything about this. And right now, the most significant area of market structure is this low, right? So, yeah, FTM. I'm just going to keep things moving if they don't stand out as being, just patently or very obviously bullish looking. FTM, Phantom. I mean, I would say that this is bearish. We close back below this low. I'm targeting at least 260. Looking at this on the daily. That's your level to rework if you're planning on being bullish. Getting back above, pivot here, high, pivot. Now closing through on the daily. I think that you probably come down and test this low. 260 on the weekly, but it's an alt. It's not going to respect that level perfectly. It's probably going to flush it. So I think that you get probably a move down to 240, 250 area. Not looking too hot. Not looking too hot. But the level to overtake right back above that is right here, right? So we're close, but no cigar. Neblio. Ugh. Sorry. That one's not. I mean, I hate to brush it off like that, but. I mean, all right, so here's the thing about Neblio. Brush this off. Not give it the time of day like a jerk. Take this magnet off. So this is sort of one of those setups, right? This is good that I went back on this. Would have been a jerk to just go forward. I would have missed this. So here's your weekly structure, right? This is higher time frame structure going back to June 2019. Do I think this is probably going to transpire favorably or occur favorably? I don't know. I don't want to go that far. But at least you have a very clean area on the weekly structure that now, if it's significant, if it's lost, it should result in continuation. This move through this low now is so close to this area being invalidated, validated for some sort of long thesis. Now, if we're able to close back above 46.41, that sets up one of those mean reversion plays back up to the high, and we'll expect that to maybe range out and turn into more of a range before maybe further breaking down. But if you get that break back above here, this is sort of like your deviation within the structure. It's tough with alts, though, because when deviations occur, you want to see that there's trapped positions. Some of these don't even really have significant short interest, right? So it's not like BTC. XRP, yeah. I mean, it's a much dirtier looking ETH and BTC chart. It's just it's at an area that should act like support, but your most significant level is 25,679 right here, right around there, right? In terms of longs, I wouldn't want to be in any position until we're back. Just consider this swing low right here. And I'm not too confident on XRP, and I'm sure you guys know that by now. This weekly level right here, I'll just leave this on. You can see how, again, the idea of a zone is important. Floor, floor, ceiling, ceiling, ceiling. Higher time frame positions, nothing really changes with XRP because it hasn't in a long time at the same level until we're back above this level forming a base. Then maybe, you know, your traders come out of the woodworks and they draw very loose inverse head and shoulders. But until then, you know, lose this high right here and XRP is coming down to 17 again. I would focus on this area that we're sort of at right now to look for maybe signs of strength. But it's not something I'm too confident in. You're not seeing the that's weird. Is anyone else seeing it? Huh. Okay. Ocean. Okay. Binance. Ocean USDT chart. I thought I just looked at that. Oh no, I looked at it. Okay. All right. Ocean USDT. Yeah, the comments are right here, guys. So I don't know why those aren't popping up. I thought maybe they would pop up on the YouTube screen. I'm sorry if they don't do that. I'll do that next time. Same chart, my man, or my friend, whoever. Same chart. This is a cool distribution you have going on right here. It's pretty balanced. I don't mean it's cool. I mean it's just it's coiling, right? It's a balanced distribution. This is a better looking chart than a lot of the other alts because it at least has a very clean looking sideways structure. It's not just perpetually drifting lower. So this 40 level is nice. This is the value area high. This is sort of your area where price has been rejected very obviously multiple times. Now the trouble is that it's just been rejected even sooner in this case. So if you're looking to long, which I feel like a lot of followers are, you want to see that you're back above 40. All right, or maybe you take another shot when price dips below 32 and reclaims this level. But where it is right now, it's not looking good. The structure though is good because it's clean, right? It's not clean, it's balanced. All right, you are seeing the questions, chats. Okay, so last one. I think that's it. I covered everything. We covered EOS. We covered, let's see, ICX. It's dead. ICX is just dead. I mean, it's not dead, but it's fallen back within the range. Yeah, I think that ICX is probably coming back down to 28 at least. I don't think, yeah, this is, I'm trying to pick good looking charts, and I'll tell you right away, I don't think ICX looks like it has any kind of promise in the near future. But at least it has some key levels right where we currently are. Okay, your most recent swings, right around 35, right around 43. You know, we're back above here. All right, maybe it's starting to put in a base, but at least, again, it's showing clean structure on the way down. It shouldn't be too hard to figure out, you know, once you're above a previous level, that's looking strong on the way down. So far, though, this is looking like it made a move above the high, and now it's, excuse me, that it made a move above this high, and now it's lost it. Okay, theta, and then that's the last one, I think. And I'll pick the person who won. I think I already have an idea who did. In terms of asking for the best chart. Ooh, that's extended. Ooh, theta's extended. Let's look at, that's theta versus BTC. Let's look at theta USD. Yeah, I mean, hey, the trend is upward. But what you're starting to see is big move, big, slightly smaller move, big move, slightly smaller than the last. It looks like this is, you know, it's following the rest of the cycle, you know, coming from March. This is definitely you know, of some of the other positions, it's had the strongest run up, but I don't know if it's looking like it's the best buy right now. But it's, you know, at least it is, as long as we're hanging out above this most recent high, which was a consolidation we broke out of, this is actually looking decent. I don't want to say this is a sell by any means. It's just a strong trend upward, right? Good chart. Okay, so we're about 2 hours into this. D. Ross, I'll talk to you, buddy. Let's see. I think I have an idea of who. Let me go through the chat again and read who asked.